Most Ironman age groupers are not aware of just how important correct fueling and hydration is going to be to their success on race day. In order to get that right, you've got to practice it repeatedly in training. In this video, I'll show you how to fix 5 common mistakes with your fueling and hydration so you can ride stronger, recover faster, and feel super confident heading into race day. I'm Coach Rob Wilby from Team Oxygen Addict. Let's get to it. Now, before we jump in, if you're preparing for your first Ironman, there's a link in the show notes down below for a free online training seminar. It's 30 minutes of your time that I guarantee will massively increase your chances of success on Ironman race day. And also, I'd love it if you'd subscribe to our channel and like this video if you enjoy it. Right, let's get started on these mistakes and what you can do to fix them. Not taking enough carbs on long rides. So, for people who are relatively new to the sport, and even actually, to be honest, people who've been in the sport for a while, we're only recently becoming aware of just how important getting the right amount of carbohydrate into your body is, and how increasing the amount of carbohydrate that you can safely take and absorb can improve your race day performance. Now, the advice I've always given our athletes is shoot for 1 gram of carbohydrate per hour per kilo of body weight. So if you weigh 60 kilos, you're looking for 60 grams an hour. If you weigh 90 kilos, you're looking for 90 grams an hour. It's looking like, with more research that's coming out recently, that body weight actually plays less role in this than we thought. And even that smaller athletes might have more to gain by having relatively larger amounts of carbohydrate. So all the information coming back from Precision Fuel and hydration studies that they've been doing, some of their top end pros and age groupers are doing something like 110 grams an hour of carbs plus when they're on the bike. Now that's a very, very high number. And if you try and jump straight in at that, you're going to probably find you have some kind of GI distress. So don't go right in for the very top number. What I'd advise doing is, firstly, just monitor on your next long ride how many grams of carbs you've taken when you get back. Make a note of all the things that you've eaten and drunk. Tot that up and work out how many grams of carbs that represents. And then let's gradually across time increase the amount that you're taking and see how you feel. My guidelines here is that we try and increase by 5 grams a week, and we try and increase to the point where we find a level that you can comfortably tolerate, but that's positively affecting performance on the bike. I'm going to talk a little bit later on about gut training as well. But the first part of this is be aware that most people don't take on enough carbs, and be aware that you can train the amount of carbs that your body can absorb, but it is going to be a process of training that during your training weeks so that come race day, not only do you have confidence in what you're going to do, but you've trained your body to be able to absorb more. Failing to train your gut for higher carb intakes. Now, this is our second point here, and it's directly related to the first one. Whatever your starting point is, studies have shown that most bodies are trainable to a lesser or greater degree. And so the advice we give to our athletes is to try and increase the amount of carbohydrate that you take by 5 grams of carbs per hour every hour that you're out. So let's say you started after your first ride, you did the check-in and you worked out you were taking 40 grams an hour. The next week on your long ride, try 45 grams, then 50 grams, then 55 grams. You're going to get to the point where across time, you feel as though you've got to about the right amount for you. Now, a lot of our athletes are finding that somewhere in the 80 to 90 grams an hour range is about as much as they can tolerate. My feel on this is that very top performing age groupers and pros might be able to absorb more. And it's one of those function fits purpose things. The fact they can absorb more means that they are one of the people that's performing more highly. Now, it's something you're going to have to try for yourself, but just bear that in mind. I think the idea of 1 gram per kilo of body weight, that's the kind of first port of call that you're shooting for. And then if you can add even more in across time, essentially the more energy in the form of carbs you're providing your body during training and during racing, the more energy it's got to draw on. And most importantly, I think for Ironman athletes, the more you can take on during the bike, the more carbs are going to be saved for the marathon when it's going to be a bit harder to take carbs on board. So the more you can get the fueling in during the ride, the better. And the more you can train that during training across several weeks, the better. Now, with our athletes we coach, we've actually got a quite rigorous system we use for this. We've got a spreadsheet we give to athletes We get them to track exactly what they've done on a long ride, break it down into how many grams per hour that's been, and then make the target for the next week of 5 grams per hour more and track that across time. And our athletes have shown they can go from, 40 grams to 80 grams an hour across a sort of 8-week period. But the key to this is you don't know what you're doing until you track what you're doing. You don't know what your natural intake level is until you track it. Some of you might be finding you're going out and you're doing a 3-hour long ride on barely anything at all and hardly having any grams of carbs. So there is a big level of performance improvement you can get just by having more carbs. And also you'll find you recover from the rides much more quickly if you're fueling them really well as well. Choosing the wrong calorie sources during training. What I mean by this is I've talked about grams of carbs. We've moved away from talking about the calories an athlete takes in to talking about the grams of carbs an athlete takes in. And the reason for that is that most real foods that you have also have calorie contributions from fat and from protein. And while they're contributing calories, they're not contributing calories in a way that's going to be directly helpful for you in terms of fueling your ride. So it might be if you buy, for example, a great one here is a Cliff Bar. If you've got a 60-gram Cliff Bar, only 40 grams of the calories in that are actually from carbs. The rest of it are from fat and from protein. Now, that's not a bad thing, but it means you have to keep a track of how many grams of those carbs you've taken in rather than the calorie source itself. Everybody's already got plenty of fat stored to get the fat that you need for training. You don't need to be taking in protein during training, right? Your body's simply not going to use it as part of the training process. Any protein that you need, you can have in your meals, your normal meals outside of sort of racing and training nutrition. So that'll provide the building blocks for rebuilding your muscles. But you don't need that during training. And crucially, if you can reduce the amount of fat and protein you're having in those foods and replace it with foods that are really high just in carbs, then that means you're going to be able to get more carbs into your body more easily every hour. Neglecting pre-ride carbohydrate intake. So a really big one for me here is don't go out fasted. Don't consciously decide you're going to go out and train without having any food beforehand. Don't decide you're going to try and be calorie limited, try and use training to lose weight. That's not what the Ironman long ride is about. What we want you doing here is having a breakfast that's high in carbohydrate, and the guidance from the PFH website here is 1 to 4 grams of carbohydrate per kilo of body weight in a couple of hours before you go out. So toast, porridge, things like that are high in carbs. That's going to be providing carbs for you to use during the ride and training. And it's going to be getting your body used to processing carbohydrate while you're training. So I'm a big fan of having a high carbohydrate breakfast just before you go out, or a high carbohydrate meal just before you go out to do your ride. Don't go with fasted training. The idea of, training your body to burn fat, that's not what you're trying to do here. Your body is absolutely fine at using fat as a fuel, and it's not going to be any better at it if you go out without having anything to eat beforehand. Your race day success is going to be about having trained your body to absorb and process carbohydrate while you're exercising. That's the key here. And lastly, drinking only to thirst instead of having a plan. Now, it's very, very important that we listen to our thirst when we're out there. And if it's a very hot day and we're really thirsty and we've got a hydration plan, it's absolutely fine and important, in fact, to drink more than you've planned to. But start by having a plan. And it's a great point to go over to the Precision Fuel and Hydration website. You can take their online sweat test there, and it'll give you a really good lead for a baseline amount of fluid that you need for your event, for your sort of temperature that you tend to train in. You've got a baseline idea there, and usually they say it's in the range 500 to 750 milliliters of fluid per hour. If it's really hot, you might find that you need up to 1500 milliliters of fluid per hour. And all of this needs to be balanced with the correct concentration of electrolytes to suit you. But the key here is having a plan to start with, making sure that you train with that plan and stick to that plan. And then if you go out and train on days when it's really hot, and you recognize that you're more thirsty and you need more, you can start to get an idea for how much fluid you're going to need on a particularly hot day. Because everybody's different, There are some people who are extremely heavy sweaters in terms of volume. Some people are not very heavy sweaters in terms of volume. So we need to work out what works for you. And then crucially, how you need to make adaptations to that based on whether it's really hot or not on the day of your event. I hope this video has helped you. In the comments below, I'd love to hear about mistakes that you've made in the past with Ironman fueling and Ironman hydration. It'll really help other athletes in our community who haven't done an Ironman yet, and it'll stop them making those mistakes. If you're a first timer, I'd love for you to leave a comment about what your worries are, and we'll try and help and give you some advice here so you can build a really solid strategy. And remember, please like and subscribe if you've enjoyed this video and it's helped you.